Thank you for joining us for another episode of Exposing Scientology, where we reveal what really goes on inside this business masquerading as a church. Oh, ha, Peter is there.
Yeah.
Hi, Lily.
Hi, honey. Hi, Mikey.
Hi, Peter. I was going to do this introduction to you, and I forgot to take you out, so you're here right from the outset, which is okay.
Perfect.
Everybody, this is Peter Bonyai, and Peter is someone that I have known since, gosh, when was it? Like 2014 or 15 or something, when you first left or first started speaking out about your experiences in the Sea Organization. Peter lives in Hungary. He is a Hungarian, and he wrote a book which unfortunately is not in print in English at this point. I will have a link to it so you can see anyway. And it was about his experiences in the Sea Organization, fundraising for Scientology, how he got into Scientology right after high school, etc., etc. Peter also formed a foundation, which I'll have a link to help former Scientologists and help the authorities in Hungary and elsewhere to bring about reform and end the abuses in Scientology. So with that as a background, the reason that we are talking to Peter today is because it was announced yesterday that well, actually, I'll let Peter describe this, what happened, because this is in large part a result of the work that he has done to brief government officials and agencies in Hungary over the last 8 years. And it's sort of coming to fruition. And the day before yesterday, there was an announcement that was made that is very significant. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead with that, Peter?
All right. Okay. So let's start at the end then. How we got. So we don't go through the whole timeline how we got here. Okay. Let's just recap what happened yesterday. Basically, the prosecutor's office for the capital city of Budapest issued a press release that 11 Scientologists were indicted for tax fraud, tax evasion committed in a criminal conspiracy. And then the press release went into detail about the charges. Basically, they lacked or forgot or purposefully did not charge sales tax, value-added tax to every single transaction they made.
Which is probably substantial. I mean, well, I shouldn't say substantial, Mike, because Scientology is not doing a whole lot of business, but still illegal activity, Peter. So that 11 Scientologists were charged with this is an amazing accomplishment, something we haven't been able to do here since 1978.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it took 6 years for the tax office to complete and wrap up the investigation. And they turned it over to the prosecutor's office, and they decided to indict the suspects.
And is that because work? I'm sorry, Mikey, go ahead.
It's all right. We both started at the same time. You can go first.
Wasn't
Ladies
it,
first.
I was just going to say, Peter, is that in large part because of your reporting or your insistence that they step in, the agency step in and investigate Scientology's business practices?
I don't think I am that good, so no.
Well, I do.
I cannot take down single-handedly such a criminal.
Of course you didn't, but Peter, you have been bringing information and briefing people in the government of Hungary about the abuses of Scientology, financial, data protection, breaking up families, etc., for 8 years. And there was a raid that occurred in, when was that? 2017?
Right.
And they raided like the FBI did here in the United States, Leah. They raided and got a whole bunch of documents.
Mhm.
And those documents are what they are now using to bring this prosecution. And they brought an earlier prosecution, which I want to talk about a little later, for data protection violations in Hungary. You know, Peter is very modest, and certainly he is not a prosecutor. He's not a government agent. But we know, Leah, that when someone is persistent and has the facts and goes to the appropriate authorities and persists with them, that they can bring about actions like this in the end. There's no direct, the prosecutor isn't going to come out and say, well, Peter Bonyai told me that this, but
No, but we're talking, and I'm suggesting that, and like you said, Peter's being modest, but I think you underestimate, Peter, the amount of people who are not doing the work, right? And it's like Mike just said, it could take one very persistent person in seeking justice or seeking some kind of investigation into their business practices to get something done. And it takes somebody who is dedicated to that to get something done, because I don't see any government official running to or police department here in the States doing a whole lot about things that they should be doing a whole lot about.
I see.
Yeah.
Right.
I can say something about that, because I think that's an important point. It's a question of viewpoint.
Yeah.
Because what I ran into in the beginning is that government officials handled or looked at Scientology as it is just another shady corporation. You know, it comes into this country, it's a multinational company, wants to do business, studies the local laws, finds some loopholes, and sets up a reasonable legal operation, which can be defended.
Yeah.
But this is a false assumption. As Scientology, you know, they have the policy, they want to operate it that way, no matter what the local laws are. And if they are not compatible with the structure Hubbard designed, then they just brute force their way through. So they don't want to adhere to the laws. They want to enforce their own structure and their own laws. That's a very important distinction, that they understand that Scientology does not want to comply with laws. This is a very important difference between a regular corporation and Scientology. And they have to understand that they won't cooperate, they will fight. They will push their own agenda. Because this is, you know, that's, you know, they started first, you know, they went easy on Scientology. They thought if they frighten them a little bit, they will get their shit together, and get their compliance department in shape, and they will adhere to the laws eventually, because that's all other corporations do. When they face government actions, you know, they start to do something about it. But right. Scientology won't do that, and they didn't understand the length they had to go to get Scientology to actually comply with anything. So they have to start with another assumption, that Scientology does not want to comply with the laws. They want to find a way to operate and then, you know, produce all the paperwork in the world to somehow defend that. That's a very important difference.
That's a great point, Peter. That's a great point. And it's something that is very, very difficult. Leah and I have found this almost impossible to get through the heads of the people who should be monitoring or policing the activities of Scientology, that they will not change, and that they do not believe that they are responsible for complying with WOG non-Scientology law.
Exactly.
That they are supposed to bend the world and the law to fit what Hubbard's policy says.
Mhm.
And this concept is so hard for people to understand, that because it's so it's like
It's a unique problem. It's a unique problem. This is the first thing they have to realize. It's not just another fraud, not just another cult. It's a very unique problem.
yes, I agree.
Yeah, because you have businesses who are set up and creating scams and looking to make money for themselves, and they're very aware that what they're doing is illegal, right?
Exactly.
We can go through all of how many businesses have been caught and like doing things that were illegal, right? But I think the point that you're saying is very hard for people to comprehend, law enforcement, government agencies, is that you have an organization masquerading around as a religion, but it conducts itself as a business, and a business, like Mike said, that and you have mentioned, Peter, that is set up to purposely get around the laws of the land, even though they have policies that say, for PR reasons, follow the laws of the land and the Way to Happiness book. But this is all, part of the big scam, right? Is to appear as though we are just a new religion being attacked for no reason, and this is normal for people to attack new religions, and there's a script that we all learn to say, right? Find out for yourself. If I wanted to know about something, I would read a book. Like these are things that are taught to us as scripts. But it is very difficult. And Yashar Ali actually said it great, Mike, and he's written this on his own Substacks, right? That if you think of Scientology in a way that kind of you need to take away all of your common sense, all of your common decency, your civility, right? Your inclination to follow the law, like you have to suspend all of that to actually start to understand what you're talking about with Scientology as a Sea Org, the Sea Org members and the structure of Scientology, but also civilian Scientologists who are taught that it's okay to break the law. It's okay to lie for Scientology. It's okay to lie to to the authorities, to government agencies. This is all justifiable behavior as set forth by their actual policies that anybody could read. And it baffles my fucking mind every time, Mike, you and I are asked, but would they lie? We're like, holy fuck, have you listened to anything any of us have ever said ever?
Yeah, well put, Leah.
When you're doing like when you're acting, right, and you're in a movie or you're in a sitcom, whatever, right, and somebody screws up a line or whatever, they always say back to one, which means go back to your first mark, right, and start again. And everybody, the atmosphere has to reset back to where they started when they said action. And every time I hear this question being asked, I'm like, we're back to one, everybody, back to one.
Yep. Yes.
So, it's an amazing accomplishment, Peter, that any energy that you put in resulted in this happening. And this is why we're talking to you, because it is so important for people to understand that you're just one person, but one person can affect change.
Yep. And actually, Peter, one of the things that I wanted to touch upon with you is the fact that Hungary is a part of the EU. And how this may affect other member nations, because it's sort of like in the United States. If one state does something, it's more likely that other states are going to see things in a similar way. And Europe is guided by many laws that are very similar. And, I touched upon it earlier, and I want you to talk a bit also about the data protection violation that Scientology was found guilty of in 2017. For people in the United States, the data protection laws in Europe are a little outside the idea of what anybody in the US could ever think would be enforceable. They are very, very strict. You are not allowed to collect information and keep it on people. And, pre-clear folders and ethics files and things that are part of Scientology policy are in direct violation of many of these laws in Europe. And particularly if an individual asks that their information be destroyed or excised or removed from the records of the organization. You basically have an absolute right in Europe, and correct me if I'm saying anything at all that's wrong here, Peter, but you basically have an absolute right to insist, if you were a Scientologist, that if you leave, that Scientology destroy every file that they have on you, and they are bound by law to do so, even though that's in violation of policy. Am I all accurate so far, Peter, or is there nuances that I've messed up?
Well, the gist of it was correct.
Very diplomatic.
So basically, what you need to understand is the whole concept of data protection. It's mother law. I don't know if it is the correct English expression, but it's mother law is the right to human dignity. Because if an organization knows everything about you, you lose your dignity. You see, you are in the light naked. you lose. That's why these data protection laws were created, that people can hold on to their dignity in face of corporations.
Sorry, Peter. That is so very poignant. I've never heard this phrase, and it is so true, because it is what happens to all of us, right? There's a loss of dignity because we are not seen as human to Scientology, the organization, or its policies once you step outside of their own laws. And this is fair game, right? The banner of fair game, of which there's thousands of policies that dehumanizes every single one of us for the quote unquote crimes we've committed against Scientology, right? That's speaking out, that's sticking up for yourself or your family member, looking for a family member, doing a welfare check, going to civil authorities. These are things that we take for granted as our human rights, right? These are human rights. They have the audacity to have a front group that basically promotes human rights and educates people on human rights, and yet we have no dignity. We have no right to survive, right? Just our everyday lives. We can't go out with our children. We can't tweet. We can't stick up for family members or friends. We can't do basic things. We can't go to the grocery store without being stalked and harassed. Like, there are things we just, our lives are made very difficult. And that phrase really is hitting me, Mike, in a different way, because it's so true. We just don't have that here.
Right.
It seems, right? for
Yes.
people who are
Yes.
advocating. Mhm.
So Peter, is there something else you wanted to say about those data?
So basically, and that's one thing it revolves around. And the second most important factor is purpose. So you have to have a valid purpose to collect data or to store data. And as soon as this purpose disappears, for example, somebody leaves Scientology, then the organization has no longer a legal purpose to keep data on him. Because to spy on someone or to store compromising information is not a legal purpose. So that's why they have to destroy everything if the person requests it.
They're doing it, Peter. Who's watching them do it? Who's supervising that activity of them destroying that? No one, right?
There is a data protection authority, or should be a data protection authority in each member nation. Mm-hmm. And the commissioner of that authority is ultimately responsible for enforcing. This is the so-called General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR. That's a law which is enforced in the whole European Union. Mm-hmm. So it's this is a weak point in Scientology. So this has been applied in Hungary to great success. Mm-hmm. And they have been fined. They appealed the fine. They lost the appeal. They appealed to the Supreme Court of Hungary, and they lost that too. And now they can go to, and then they did not go to the European Human Rights Court, which would have been the next step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know why?
Very significant, because it tells us that they do not dare to risk to lose such a lawsuit.
Right, because if they lost in the European Court of Human Rights, then every member nation would know that if they enforce the protections, it's never going to get overturned, because the European Court of Human Rights is like the Supreme Court for all European member nations with respect to enforcement of laws. So they would not do that, and it's no surprise to me. But the very fact that Scientology did not appeal there should tell every other nation in Europe, you're on very, very, very strong grounds if you go after Scientology for violating the data protection laws. And this raises a point, Leah. Any person in any European member nation could write tomorrow or today or whenever they're watching this and demand that their local Scientology organization destroy all records about them. And if they refuse or they don't get an answer and they persist a little, they can take that to their nation's data protection authority and probably get action, because this is treated very seriously there. I mean, this prosecution that happened in Hungary in 2017, that resulted in $112,000 fine. Mm-hmm. And they said, there's a quote here that the head of the Data Protection and Freedom of Information Authority for Hungary said that Scientology's record keeping contains, quote, really serious abuses, unquote. Now, that was in 2017, and we all know they haven't changed a thing. Mm-hmm. So it's still happening today. Even in Hungary, it's still happening today, let alone all the other nations around Europe. So it was something that I really wanted to bring up, because I think we're talking about an individual being able to do something. Anybody who is a former Scientologist who was ever in any Scientology organization in Europe can demand that their files be destroyed, that even being taken off the mailing list, right, Peter? They're not allowed to keep your address.
That's one piece of data they have. This is also a personal data, your contact information.
Right.
You can demand to delete. And, that's okay. So there are two important points I would like to make here. One, if you submit a formal request to have all your data, including your contact information, every PC folder, every ethics folder, everything destroyed, and you get one single piece of letter from Scientology after that, it's a criminal offense. And you can file a police report.
I wish I had that here, because God, they could save, they can save thousands of trees with the amount of mail they send out, even when people, request, please stop sending me things, right? They don't get taken off any mailing list.
Right.
And they continue to get stuff from Scientology every day, all day. Mike, are you going to post all this information for people?
Yes. And I will get Peter to help me to make sure that everything is accurate and we have all the right information in there. But yes, I'm going to do a blog post concurrent with this that will lay out for everybody. Look, here is how this works, and this is what you can do, because I really think it's important, and I just don't think enough people know or are aware of this.
Yeah, I agree. All right, what's the other point, Peter?
The other point is what came up during the Data Protection Authority investigation is that the most flagrant violation of the data protection laws was collecting information on unsuspecting third parties. This frequently happens in SEC checks. You give information, you give sensitive information, very personal data about people who are not Scientologists and were never in contact with the organization, which in itself is illegal.
Wow.
When you say SEC checks, this is Scientology's version of an interrogation that happens hundreds of times throughout your Scientology career. And you're right, Peter, because you are often giving up information to what you think is your, church that's confidential, that's not going to be used against you, but they are collecting data on people who have, and how many times have I told stories in an interrogation of Scientology thinking it was, innocuous or wouldn't be used, and those people are targeted by Scientology once you are labeled an enemy to them.
Yes, but Leah, it's even more I don't know what the right word is, severe or restrictive or whatever. Every Sea Org member, every person who signs their billion-year contract to join the Sea organization has to fill out a life history. And in that life history, they have to disclose every single person they have ever had sexual relations with.
Yes. Yeah.
All of those people, all of those names are violations of the data protection law. All of those names are names of people who may or may not be Scientologists, but certainly did not submit to have Scientology gathering information about their sexual relationships.
Right.
This is a massive Achilles heel for Scientology, because we all know that Scientology insists on keeping records of everything, every little detail of everything. And part of it is so that it can be used subsequently. It's not even just that they want to keep it, just for the sake of keeping it. It's so they have all this stuff to use in the future if they need to.
Right. And
against someone.
And for those who are unaware of these kinds of practices, Mike and Peter are pointing out these security checks, these interrogations, and there are very specific ways that these are done, because, I'm not allowed to get away with, a Scientology session where I'm being interrogated. If I say, oh, I had sex with, I don't know, let's just call him Bill. It'll be, no, let's not just call him Bill. We'll come back from the Scientology auditor. What is the person's name? First and last name. Where did they live? Where do you remember they lived? Where was it near? And these questions are if you know, a normal person not being indoctrinated to Scientology for a long time might say, why do you need all this information? And what is told to you is it's for you to have as many details as you can view so that this thing that's blocking you or you feel bad about will go away. It's for you to view. And the more details you give us, the better for you. That's a justification for getting exact time, exact place, exact person's name, right, Mike? Like this is for this to go away in your universe, in your mind, where you're storing this upsetting charge that you have on this particular incident. And so that's what's told to everybody.
Yes.
That it's for you, but
Right.
in fact it isn't. And you find that out only after you leave.
Yeah, I mean, the life history questionnaire was a very specific point in the investigation of the Data Protection Authority. And the chairman of the Data Protection Authority personally told me that Scientologists told him that they needed to judge the qualifications of future executives. And he told me that he cannot, no matter how hard he tries to think, he cannot simply find any single well-intentioned or justifiable reason to ask for this kind of information, because it's completely unrelated to employment qualifications. So it's unconscionable, really, to ask for a detailed sexual history of someone, because it just has no relation at all to his skills.
Which is what the authorities should be asking to Scientology organizations in the United States, because they ask these sexual questions to children. And they suggest to children that they have lived many lives before and coerce and under duress, because they're in a locked room with a Scientology auditor that they see as a parental figure, an authority figure. Their Scientology parents have set people up in the organization as senior to this child and the child's parents. And it just shocks me to hear that this thing exists, but doesn't exist in the States, and certainly doesn't exist in a way for children, to protect children from Scientology and this practice of security checking.
Yep. Yeah. Peter, let me, you know, do you want to say anything else about the data protection subject?
No, I think we touched the key points.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to push this hard, because I think there is a lot of ground to be made here. I want to go back to this tax issue, because this, the prosecutor's office, according to the reports, have said that they believe that the primary goal, and this is a quote, the primary goal was to obtain as much income as possible. Ha! Quite astute there. And that staff, quote, were aware of the tax evasion, foresaw its consequences, and did not intend to declare the tax owed on its earnings. That effectively this was a conspiracy that these people engaged in to avoid paying the tax that they should be paying. And they are asking for them to be sent to prison, along with the assessment of $1.7 million in back or owed taxes. But this is just for the years 2012 to 2017, right, Peter?
Yes.
So there's another 6 years accumulated after that. And I assume that the years 2012 to 2017 relate to the fact that the raid occurred in 2017. Exactly. That's where they have those records up till.
That's the actual reason. Yes.
Okay. Is there some way that they are going to be able to now get records for subsequent years, other than just doing the raid?
I don't know what they are planning. if they want to continue this. The reason this was done for that 5 years specifically, because in 2012, at the beginning of this period, we had a change in legislation, a new law which made it a bit more difficult to register a church, and Scientology for a while was taken off from the list of registered churches and became a religious association. So they did not really lose religious recognition, but they lost a lot of privileges. And before 2012, it was laughably easy for churches to do accounting. They simply had to do a balance sheet every year. They didn't even have to keep receipts, nothing. So they were basically invulnerable to prosecution and investigation. And when this was over in 2012, that was the first point that you could actually make a normal investigation and ask for receipts, ask them to provide justification for collecting donations, for actual services. That's the key point of contention here between the church and the state. That training courses and auditing services, books, these are tangible quid pro quo services. So it's not just like a once in a lifetime marriage
or tithing. What you want to do. It's a business. It's a business transaction. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Which is repeated often. So this has all the hallmarks of a traditional business deal. You pay for something, a fixed amount,
which is fine,
you get
right?
an exact service in return.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a business activity. I mean, you can conduct business activities as a church, but that doesn't make you exempt from sales tax and every other tax, because that's different from your religious activities, because it is aimed at making profit, so it cannot be a non-profit. Right. I'll tell you one example. In 2015, just 1 year before the Ideal Org has opened, the Church of Scientology Budapest has posted a balance sheet, and they posted that they made $3.5 million profit in 1 year. One single org. I mean, the number was inflated by the fundraising figures, surely, but it is such an anomaly that an organization which is supposedly for the public benefit and non-profit makes an astoundingly huge profit in 1 year. So something cannot be right.
Right. Just by the way, Peter, and Leah, and everybody listening, there is a United States Supreme Court case, the Hernandez case, where the United States Supreme Court says that transactions for auditing and training in Scientology are quid pro quo transactions. That means they are, you pay for something, you get it in return. It is not a donation. It is not charity. By definition, that can't be charity.
Right.
That cannot be a charitable contribution.
Okay.
And yet, in the face of that United States Supreme Court decision, the IRS still granted Scientology not only tax exempt status, but deductibility for those quid pro quo transactions. I mean, it is so outrageous that it sort of gets lost. Like the Supreme Court said that, and yet
here we are. Thank you to Fred Goldberg, right?
Yeah, well, he was gone by then, but by the time the decision was done. But anyway, Peter, how we know and have talked a bit about how the data protection laws are Europe-wide. All countries in Europe have VAT, right?
Yeah. That's universal. Yes.
Yes, and for anybody in the United States that doesn't understand what VAT is, it stands for value added tax. It's sort of a complicated sales tax. It's got other things that go along with it. You know, you add value to something and you sell it, so you pay. But then the next guy, if he sells it, he also has to. Anyway, it's a tax that organizations are required to pay, and they're supposed to keep track of how much income did they make and pay their value added tax payments to whatever government agency collects them. And throughout Europe, this is everywhere you go, there is VAT, just like there's sales tax everywhere you go in the United States. Are the laws that govern this nation by nation, or are there European-wide laws also like the data protection laws? Do you know?
Tax laws are rather unique to the member nations, but there is an ongoing effort to harmonize, that's how it's called, harmonize all the laws all throughout the European Union. So even if they're different, there are a lot of similarities, and the basic principles are the same. So if this becomes a successful prosecution, and goes through appeals and it stands, and then it can be a recipe for all the European Union. And I would like to tell a little bit inject an interesting point, because the church did the ideal opening, and they collected a massive amount of money locally for that.
And the ideal org is just another scam that David Miscavige came up with, that every organization of Scientology be to a certain standard, and size, and millions of dollars are put into beautiful marble staircases and the best of everything, and they just remain empty. Not only can Scientology pay for these buildings and don't, they then have the audacity to raise the money through their own civilian parishioners who have already paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to be Scientologists. Now they're being asked to pay for these buildings that stay completely empty after their ideal. Sorry, Peter.
Exactly, because so the way VAT works is you add this to your income, but you can subtract the VAT of all your expenses, and you pay the difference to the government. And so Scientology, in opting not to add VAT or disregard this completely, it's not just illegal, it's a monumental stupidity and colossal incompetence, because if they spend like millions of dollars on renovations, they accumulate a huge VAT surplus. So they wouldn't even have to pay this money to the government for years. So it is against even common business sense not to adopt VAT and collect, because they were spending way more than they were taking in for a while because of all the renovations and the ideal work. That VAT wouldn't even, so it wouldn't have been an issue to pay VAT because of the large surplus created by. So this is so monumentally stupid that they. So you see, this is their own undoing. This whole rigid, idiotic policies they cling to, that this is their own undoing here.
Yes. Oh, that is an amazing piece of information. Like I said, VAT is a little more complicated than just sales tax in the United States, because it passes from person to person, or the creator of something to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. You deduct what you paid from what you owe, and as Peter says, but in the time prior to, when they were collecting way more than they were spending, they were accumulating a lot of potential VAT tax in those years. Anyway, it's a little bit complicated, but the picture of Scientology and its relationship with government agencies and particular taxation agencies is the same, regardless of the details of VAT or not. Scientology refuses to pay taxes to anyone for anything, anywhere, ever, unless they have been prosecuted already for it.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line.
Exactly.
So, Peter, what do you think the future look for Scientology in Hungary is?
Well, it's a bit difficult to predict because the church is not a rational actor. They don't. Because normally a business, a business organization, if it finds itself in such a situation, they quickly, they pay all the back taxes, they fully cooperate, and at least they pretend that they will not do this again. So they escape harsher consequences, or they work out some kind of deal with the prosecutor, so no one has to go to jail. But Scientology, I think they will fight this to the very end, because I think David Miscavige thinks that he cannot lose such a court case, because if the whole thing goes through appeals and he has a decision in Europe that Scientology's services are fundamentally commercial in nature, that means that they have to pay taxes everywhere. Or it can lead to this scenario that they will have to start charging VAT or start paying corporate taxes, corporate income tax, because that's also, so there we have to differentiate between income for religious services like, funeral, Scientology weddings and whatever, and the other type of income which directly is paid for services. So that would mean a significant blow, income-wise, because so I think that the same. I'm not really familiar with the U.S. legal system. You have precedent laws, and this is a bit more complicated. So I don't know how it would apply there, but you also have all these protections in the Constitution, right? Because
yes,
it makes it very hard.
Fortunately and unfortunately, when you can pretend to be something that falls under the protections of the Constitution, that's unfortunate. When you're a real entity afforded the protections of the Constitution, it's a wonderful thing. I just think that you touched on something there, Peter, that I wanted to bring up also, which is VAT is one form of taxation, but there is a lot of other taxes that are owed by entities if they are not deemed to be exempt from that taxation.
Exactly.
And you bring up corporate income tax. There's property taxes. There's all sorts of forms of taxation that Scientology studiously refuses to pay on the basis that they are a fully, qualified religious organization. Even in Europe, I mean, they do it in the United States, obviously, but even in Europe, they do the same thing, which is why we are seeing this prosecution happening on VAT, because they go, oh, no, we're not paying. We're just not paying because we don't have to, because we're a religion, because therefore we're outside of that subject matter. They believe that as Scientology, they are outside the subject matter of taxation. Taxation doesn't exist in the world of Scientology. Tax people are all bad. Hubbard said so. He said the tax cruds That's what he called them, the tax cruds. And that taxation is a form of communism and I mean, it goes on and on and on. But in the world of Scientology, taxation is, we don't do that shit. We just, that's not our thing. We don't do it. And they don't pay taxes, and unless they are forced to. And this sort of action, if this prosecution of Scientology in Hungary for failing to pay VAT on the basis that the service, that it was a conspiracy and that the services were being provided on a quid pro quo basis, if this sticks, this will have dramatic consequences to all sorts of other things, not just VAT in other European countries, but taxing authorities looking and going, well, if they're not qualified to be exempt from VAT because they're selling services on a quid pro quo basis, they're also not qualified to be exempted from corporate income tax. They're not qualified to be exempted from property taxes. They're not qualified to be exempted from whatever the taxes are in their particular nation. So this is an enormously significant thing. And you are right, Peter. It is going to be fought all the way until they think that they have absolutely no hope and fear. They may take this to the European Court of Human Rights just on principle, because they can't afford not to, and they'll roll the dice and take a shot at it at the final instance, because it'll be catastrophic if this decision and the trial results in convictions and the fines being imposed and people being sent to prison term, and that is allowed to stand. That will be catastrophic for Scientology in Europe. And it will spread from Europe to other parts of the world too. Because if every European nation is now treating Scientology like that, then everywhere else is going to start looking and going, hey, we're missing out on our money.
Exactly.
And rightfully so. This is not something that they would be unjustly found responsible for. This is what they've been getting away with for decades.
Absolutely right, Leah.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. I just see this as a very, very significant crack in the dike.
And my, you know, unless there's anything you else want to add, I wanted to end my thoughts on this. You know, Scientology seems like a Goliath of an opponent to go up against, as any evil Goliath in the world. And Peter, you represent a person who is doing something about it. And something can be done about it, to use Scientology's own slogan. And you have, like Mike said, even if you got the bully on the ropes, you know you can get him on the ropes. And eventually, you know, we're all looking for a knockout to save many people, a lot of pain, a lot of agony, to their families, to their lives. And so I want to say thank you, Peter, for all that you already have done. That, you know, Mike told me I wasn't aware, and I want to thank you from my heart for doing it way before me. From my heart, thank you. And I hope you continue this. And again, you have set an example that something can be done about this evil in the world that is Scientology.
Yes,
Wow.
I couldn't say it better, Leah. I also want to thank you, Peter. Please don't ever give up. Carry on, and if there is anything that we can ever do to help you, just reach out. You know that we've been in touch for a long time. You know that we will endeavor to help you any way that we can. I think that this is an amazing accomplishment. You shouldn't be bashful about it. And maybe we'll be talking to you again when something more happens down the line. Until then, thanks everybody for watching. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Peter, for joining us. And bye, Lily. I love you.
I love you. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. You can find more episodes of Exposing Scientology, both on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to check out my best-selling memoir, 1 Billion Years, My Escape from a Life in the Highest Ranks of Scientology. It's available on Amazon and as an audiobook. Until next time, be well and happy.